Hey Baddies, we want to take a quick minute to shout out our amazing sponsor, Eli Lilly, for supporting our mission here on Baddie to Baddie. Because of their generosity, we can keep these important conversations about breast cancer awareness, education, and advocacy going strong for our community of women of color. We send our sincere thanks to our partners at Eli Lilly for standing with us. Calling all permanent makeup artists. Discover how you can join our mission to empower breast cancer survivors of color with specialized permanent makeup services. It's more than makeup, it's a movement. Connect with us and find out how you can contribute to this empowering cause by visiting baddiebeautycollective.com. In return, you will receive free breast health education, permanent makeup trainings, and much more. The Baddie Beauty Collective is brought to you by For the Breast of Us, Artistry by Zuri, and PM Yukon. If you're a breast cancer survivor looking to boost your confidence and add a bit of swag to your new normal, this is your invitation to explore free and discounted permanent makeup services by artists trained in the specifics and nuances of skin for women of color. From eyebrows to 3D areola and scar transformation, join us and let your journey of empowerment begin. Check out the Baddie Beauty Collective, brought to you by For the Breast of Us, Artistry by Zuri, and PM Yukon by visiting baddiebeautycollective.com.
Welcome to Baddie to Baddie, a monthly podcast by For the Breast of Us, the first breast cancer community for all women of color, where we share real-life experiences, information, and education to help you live your best life after a breast cancer diagnosis. Welcome to Baddie to Baddie. Welcome to Baddie to Baddie. Hello. Welcome everybody to a special episode of Baddie to Baddie, brought to you by For the Breast of Us, an all-inclusive community for all women of color who have been impacted by breast cancer. My name is Marissa. I am the co-founder and CEO of For the Breast of Us, and I have a special guest joining me today, Carlo. Hello, Carlo. How are you doing?
Hi, Marissa. Doing well.
Good. So Carlo has a special story, and I invited him here to kind of talk with me today, just so we could talk about his wife, Frida, who is an active member of the breast cancer community, and they have a special story. Carlo and I connected just to give everybody a background story because his wife, Frida, applied for our in-purpose on purpose scholarship that we have specifically for breast cancer thrivers, survivors, and previvors in our community to help them with the financial toxicity of a breast cancer diagnosis or just being impacted by breast cancer either way. So Carlo, let's talk a little bit about if you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and our viewers and let them know who you are and how you and Frida kind of met and your story.
Oh, okay. So I'm Carlo Alvear. Currently live in San Diego. And my wife, Frida, we met back in college, actually, back in, what year was that? 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty much, we were in the same grade and went through college, and probably it wasn't until our third year till we started realizing that maybe we like each other. It didn't start off so easily. We actually were going against each other in our Filipino organization when we met at UCSD. So we were actually both running for the same position, and so there was some animosity towards each other at the beginning. But eventually, once the dust settled and we even though I won, we still ended up working together. We still ended up, doing a lot of things for our community, specifically the Filipino community at UCSD.
Mm-hmm.
And then, um, we went along our way as college students, and then ended up becoming best friends.
Yeah.
And then realized that, oh, we should start going out. So um, that happened about our third year, and so we've been together a while. We were together since 2005, so
Okay.
about 19 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
then,
Yeah.
but yeah, so uh, we have three kids. We have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
who are doing amazingly well, and they're in school.
Good.
Um, but they're there, and then, I mean, basically after graduation from UC San Diego, we both decided that we're just going to stay here. So, I mean, it makes sense. She's born and raised in San Diego. I am originally from the San Francisco Bay Area,
Okay.
but I never moved back
Yeah.
because found a good home here.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, did our best to help the community in any way possible. And for her, she did a lot of community work, especially with the breast cancer community. But even before that, I mean, you could go into the different baby wearing communities and plant communities, and um, actually building communities here in San Diego. So
Yeah.
not just within the Filipino community, but I mean, her reach expanded to a lot of underserved, underrepresented communities at San Diego, and specifically at UCSD. She would work tirelessly on trying to uplift voices and those around her. So
I
making
love
sure that
it.
everyone had the same access and retention that they could have. So
Yeah. And so, in terms of Frida's breast cancer diagnosis, how old was she when she was diagnosed?
I believe she was, let's see, 2022. So she would have been, oh man, what was I that? Got like 37, 36 or 37,
Mm-hmm.
36. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
so 36. And then she was diagnosed with breast cancer 2022 in about June or July, after she found a lump in her breast in February. So it's a bit of
Mm.
the portion of breast cancer that's really unfortunate, is just how long until you actually get a diagnosis from the time that you
So,
feel
did
something.
she have to wait a while to actually be seen? That was,
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to get seen. It was hard to like, hey, for her to tell her doctor, like, we need to get this checked. And then because she was so young, like, it wasn't like high priority.
right.
But they ended up getting her seen in, I want to say, like May or June. I can't remember the timeline anymore, but something
Mm-hmm.
around there. And then finally she heard, the words that she dreaded, and we all dreaded, was like, yeah, you have it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
When she was diagnosed back in 2022, she was originally diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, correct?
I think they were back and forth between stage 2 and stage 3. And at
Mm-hmm.
that time, I think they knew that the lymph nodes were involved, but they didn't know to what extent.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, what was recommended was she goes through chemo first, and then, which was, when they went through chemo, trying to understand, will this actually affect your type of cancer? And in the end, it wasn't, as beneficial as they were hoping.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't exactly shrink it; it just cleaned up the margins.
Yeah.
Which, at that point, it was like basically surgery's next. So surgery, and then radiation.
Yeah.
So, and then during surgery, that's when they figured out, there's more lymph node involvement. We need to get more lymph nodes out of there. So at
Okay.
that point, I mean, for her, that was the one thing that she dreaded, was hearing that portion, like that. She woke up from her surgery just asking specifically about those. And yeah,
Right.
as soon as she heard, like, yeah, you have lymph node involvement, like, I mean, that's what you don't want to hear, but that's what she heard. So
Right. And now you have a unique perspective. Usually whenever we're interviewing or talking to other people in the community, it's actually people who have either been diagnosed or they have, a predisposition of, a genetic mutation, but you are actually coming from a caregiver side. So how can you speak to that as being someone who took care of somebody that was diagnosed with breast cancer?
It was challenging, but it wasn't something that I wasn't ready for. Like, when I married her, she's my partner. So of course, in sickness and in health really meant that, right? I really meant that. So, for us, it was definitely, just something that we just had to do whatever we could to do whatever she needed. Right. And then in that case, also whatever the kids needed, and wouldn't necessarily need to be only on her. Right. And right. It was never really that, but I mean, I had to take a little bit more of a role there. Right. Which was fine. I love being a dad, so it's not the worst thing, but, so I think it was, it had its challenges. She took like every step of the way. Like, I don't know if you've seen her Instagram or whatever, but she was always smiling throughout every treatment, even, granted also tears and, frustration and what have you, but she was still smiling through a lot of it. And that was just her. So, I think, part of the challenge would have been if we were really in a financial struggle, which partially we were, right? We had to rely on a lot of things that, we didn't have full amount of resources, but luckily her insurance through her work was actually one of the better ones, right? I would go with her to the chemo, what do you call it? Where they administer chemo. Right. And I would hear copays, like ridiculous amounts of thankfully we don't have, like, ours was $20. Like, I was like, thankfully, like, you have, like, where we were fortunate to have that type of insurance to be able to, like, still, cover most of the, the costs. A lot of it was taken care of through insurance. So that was helpful. But granted, I mean, it was still like a strain. Like, she had to stop working for a little bit. I was luckily with my role and my position, I was able to do a lot of work from home or work around different times of the clock. So it allowed, like, I had to have that conversation with my boss, and they were completely understanding, and actually got me into a role that was even more flexible than what I had previously. So it was definitely helpful in a way of, like, I could have taken time off, and maybe I probably should have, like, looking back at it, just like take that time off. But at the same time, I was still able to help us, get through it, as an engineer, and try to get stuff still paid for while we're, going through all of it. So.
And in terms of your kids, were you both really honest with them about,
Yeah, so the day that she found out, like, that was a rough day, and they knew something was up, but they didn't know what. But we also didn't want to hold it from them. So, like, from the beginning, like, we had to break it down for them. That's kind of like the hard part. Like, how do you explain cancer to, at the time, 8-year-old, 3-year-old, and a baby, like, infant, right?
Right.
So it was challenging, but at the same time, like, there were different resources that she reached out to also, help, with that communication. Granted, like, the day that we knew and found out it wasn't an easy conversation, but it was still something that we were able to communicate pretty well to the kids.
Yeah.
And then there were other programs that were available for the kids to kind of just, go through different activities with other children that were having parents with cancer, so that they could kind of, talk through what they were feeling, or just doing activities that would kind of help them understand, like, what does a caregiver do, or what does why are we wearing these masks right now, or things like that. So they have, like, some pretty cool pictures with their mom of, like, they have, like, masks, and they're working on a teddy bear with putting Band-Aids or something, or whatever. So like, even throughout her treatment, it was different things, right? Her hair was going to fall out. I was like, well, I'm going to shave my head, because you don't want to freak them out with with just your hair being,
Right.
and so I shaved my head, and then I went downstairs and said, all right, here we go. And then that freaked them out a little bit, but I think it lessened the blow, right?
Yeah.
For when their mom came down. So
yeah.
I think it was, we were doing it together and trying to make it as easy as possible for the kids, even though, I mean, it can't be.
Right. Now, Frida was very involved in the breast cancer community. I know that she came to a couple of meetups that we had in the area, which was nice. Or, she always posted, some of the merchandise that we have, just kind of showing support, not only just to the community, but just organizations that she was really close to. So did she ever give you, tell you any of the things about, coming to the meetups or meeting other people in the community and what that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. Like she loved it. And it wasn't just going to the meetups. Like she would be heavily involved in the planning of the meetups or heavily involved in, just having the conversations through Zoom or wherever, like with a lot of the breast cancer communities. And just like, I knew that's part of what she needed to be, to help, be in that space and just and make sure like others around her felt her presence. Like if you know Frida or if you've met Frida for like even a minute or two, like you would feel her presence. It's crazy how many stories I heard of like how like I only knew Frida for like one day or like a few hours, and I like she had such an impact on me. I'm like, of course she did. Like that was definitely her. So yeah, I mean, like for me, like I knew that was part of her makeup, like, and what helped her continue to heal, have that emotional attachment to others, and make sure also that she's there for them. So that's a big thing for her, like just to be part of a community, and really embracing a community with what she could give and what they give back to her. So
yeah. Now, just reading some of, Frida's story, she was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer earlier this year, it sounds like. And for everyone that's watching or listening, so metastatic breast cancer, or what some people also refer to in a stage 4 breast cancer, is when breast cancer cells have traveled to another organ in your body, such as of course, your lymph nodes or another organ like your lungs or your brain or your spine, things of that nature. So tell us a little bit about that when she was diagnosed with MBC.
So that was a rough one. So one of the things that she knew, based on a second opinion, was always, or for once you are, considered NED, still have your yearly checkups, especially for her because it got to her lymph nodes, right? And it wasn't until she advocated for herself during one of her normal checkups with the
oncologist.
Thank you. It's been a minute since I've been around them. With the oncologist to like say, hey, I think I need to go get scans because that's what they recommended. So they did, and that's when they found things in her liver and I think her spine, right? And that already freaked her out. And then they didn't do a brain scan, but they eventually found like maybe a month later that there were stuff in her brain too. So it kind of, forced us into going towards a different route because they found out that yes, she was hormone positive before, but it mutated somehow, or whatever was left was still there. It was triple negative. So from that point on, we knew that we needed to try to get to at least a different, and in this case for us, it was through UCSD, to try to get to like the more cutting edge stuff as opposed to the I don't want to say basic treatment, but like the treatment that you would, So in this case, we knew we would, in theory, have to go down the, it's not experimental path, but the clinical trials or things like that to try to combat this any way possible. So, so once we found that out in like, I think it was like January of this year was her scan. And then it was just a full go. Let's just try to figure out where we need to go, get the best, care for you wherever it is. And so we moved to UCSD and started doing her her brain radiation is where we started with.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but yeah, so that's where we were, but then also taking time and just like saying like, all right, we don't know what this is going to be. Like, we know obviously it's not good. What can, what are some things that we're going to just do? And just, for her, it was making sure that whatever we did for our kids was like the best. Right. So for Kayla's 10th birthday, she really wanted it to be special. And her thing to me was, I don't know if I'm going to be here for her next one, so I want to make this as big as possible. So we did. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, even going through her Instagram, before, and then, even now, just seeing some of the pictures and everything, I could see how she wanted to, embrace, her children, and then some of the activities that you guys were doing, which was definitely beautiful. And like you said, it sounds like that was mostly her focus and her purpose of wanting to do that. Yeah. And I know that this, may be a hard conversation for you to have. And so I thank you so much for, being here to share it, not only with me, but with our listeners as well. But, it's real and it's honest. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have the conversation. But if you don't mind talking a little bit about maybe the couple of weeks even leading up to when she passed away, because the funny thing about it is, when we opened up the applications for the In Purpose, On Purpose scholarship, we opened that right at the beginning of April. And I think Frida was one of the couple of last people to apply for it. And, we had a committee of, other thrivers in the community who went through all of the applications, and they submitted her as being one of the ones chosen to receive that grant. And this was without them even knowing, what her situation was, or even that, she, had transitioned. But just because of her story and what she wrote into us and who she was in the community is one of the reasons why they wanted to award her that scholarship grant. So if you don't mind telling everybody, what those couple of weeks were like, even just with you and her and with your children.
Yeah. So don't worry about it being hard on me. It's kind of part of the deal that I knew that we would talk about. So, and it's part of the healing too. So I'm okay with it.
Right.
So about January of this year, she was actually really, she had like a cough that she couldn't get rid of anything. Right. And we couldn't figure out, what it is. And, they kept saying, just trying all the different medications of clearing a cough, like which one of these are actually going to, clear it out. So, it wasn't until maybe sometime mid-March when we finally, I think we had to go to the ER because they were saying like, oh, it looks like you have an infection or something because one of your blood counts was high. So we went, we were actually supposed to go to Disneyland that weekend. And so we went, and then they said, you know what, let's put you on these medications. Like, you can go home, but, let's keep an eye on it and keep monitoring it, but basically treat you for like as if you have some kind of virus or bacteria, whatever you give antibiotics for, right? So antibiotics to try to, clear it. And, it didn't completely help. And then we knew that around that same time, we knew we had to start her brain radiation. Mm-hmm. So then we went to brain radiation to try to essentially, like, part of, understanding, metastatic breast cancer, you got to go where the cancer is. And if it's in the brain, you can't use chemo to get through to it. So you definitely need to go do that and take care of that. So that's what we had to do. So she already had like 5 sessions. And by the 6th session, the cough was so bad, like it was hard for her to get up the stairs at that time. And so she, after one of her, I think after her 5th session, the nurse there was like, I don't feel comfortable about you going home. Let's bring you to the hospital. So then we went to the ER that day, and that was, I want to say, like March 26th or 27th, something around that. And we were there basically for 2.5 weeks. I had support from her family to watch the kids because they were still going to school, but they would come up after school if they didn't have soccer or something in the afternoon or on the weekends. But we were basically there a lot of time. And I want to say, like, for the first 2 weeks, we were pretty much trying to figure out, all right, when are we going to get out of here? Yes, she had to have like a procedure done that day where we went to the ER to remove fluid around her heart, which is what was causing her to cough a lot. And there was a lot of fluid. It was kind of, but those were kind of like the signs, like it's getting like worse, right? So,
Right.
So they had to remove the fluid, and it was looking like, all right, maybe we just go to chemo now and try to get, try to combat this any way we can. So we went the chemo route while we were at the hospital. So I mean, that was part of it, just trying to figure out what can we do to get you out of here, right? And then so people would come visit, and she was obviously online trying to either apply to things or just update people and just talk to people, because that's what she loved doing. So
Right.
So she would do that, and then it wasn't until like maybe the last week or that Saturday or something like that, like we were just talking all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden, like she had like some seizure, right, or something. It looked like a stroke. And it was pretty scary, but I was like right in front of her. So I knew, like, hey, nurses, hurry up and get over here. Like by then I already knew who all the nurses were. So it's going to be easy to go, find who was working with her that day and get their help. Right. And then they had to just kind of, run a bunch of tests, say it was a mini stroke or something, but it's probably due to the brain mets actually acting up now. And so like with that comes with like heavy, more sedated medicine to try to like combat the anti-seizure. And so like obviously in the hospital you're kind of like dealing with a whole lot of different medicines and trying to find the right balance. And by then it was like she was pretty out of it for the last like 4 days, but like she knew people were there, she could still acknowledge them. The talking wasn't as much there, but at the same time, she knew like exactly who was with her, whoever visited.
Yeah.
I think one of her best friends came by like the day that she actually felt like where she was just like laying and just tired, right? But she knew that like enough to say like, I don't want to see you here, who was her her bestie from best friend that came by, and she was like, for her that was like, she knows who's here, she knows who's with us, and then so I think but yeah, it was just up and down while we're there at the hospital. And it's like, oh, maybe this is a breakthrough, or oh, this is getting worse, like, and then like doctors would have to come in and just like daily, like just to make sure like, okay, this is looking better or this is looking worse, and it's just kind of monitoring everything. And me being there the whole time and being able to have that time with her was still it's like a weird blessing, but like just to be able to still be there with her was nice. The last day it was actually pretty joyous. They gave her like some drug that like kind of woke her up from all the narcotics that they were pumping in her for the pain. And really it was like a jolt of energy that she had on the last day. So she was talking a lot more. She was bright and spirited. She was dancing if anybody was playing music. She was joking the whole time. A lot of family and friends were able to come that day. I had a feeling it was that day. I was like, grab the kids, bring them up. I think it's today. Even though I wasn't really sure it was going to be today, I just had a feeling like, just bring them up, like forget school.
Right.
And then yeah, for her, it was an amazing time to, be able to, say our goodbyes. A lot of loved ones came by. I want to say that they were supposed to only let 2 of us in at a time. Towards the end of the day and afternoon, it was probably like 50 people in the room with her.
Yeah, that's nice.
With her. So, and she knew who was there. Like she could respond to, like we were sending like, or I told people like send voicemails, send videos or whatever, and she was responding to each one of them. I'm like, oh, this is.
Yeah.
So.
And so how are you and your kids doing now?
How are we doing? So it's, I think, relatively speaking, pretty well. It's interesting, right? That same day, like with the kids came up, but we were able to get closure with her while there. Like they have little thumbprints and stuff,
Yeah.
and I think that helped. Thumbprints with her, and I think that helped them. And then, but then I also had to break it down for them. Like this is the last day, and say goodbye and say I love you. And it wasn't until I had to do that where they really like, because obviously they were just holding cards that said like get well soon or whatever, right? So
Right.
it's like that was, I had to get some help from the child services that was actually there. I was like, hey, you're here, thanks for helping me. How do I communicate this to the kids
Right.
and get it right? And I think them being there and helping guide me, and then of course they had to leave, like, because it was at the end of their day when I actually had to give the real talk, but they prepped me enough to the point where I was able to communicate it to the kids. They, I know our daughter wanted to stay in the room, but then the boys, they I said, just stay outside. Like you don't have to, you don't have to be here if you don't want to. And
Right.
they were okay, right? So after that, like I said, there were 50 people in there with us. It didn't end there, right? After that, we obviously, like, we had prayer that day, and then the next day, people who came from like New York or LA or San Francisco, like, were over at my house already starting the planning to help me, so I didn't have to lift a finger in terms of either watching the kids or prepping for like what are the things that we need to take care of. It was amazing testament to the community that we built while from UCSD. I mean, like, a lot of our friends were from UCSD, right? So our community was strong, and I felt it, from that day on. I already knew it was there. It's just, it's amazing to see when it actually, comes when you need it the most, right? So I think that helped me the most, was just making sure that, like, we were going to be okay, and that things were getting taken care of, and it didn't necessarily have to all fall on me.
Right.
And granted, yeah, some of it does, but I barely lifted a finger for those, like, up until the funeral. Like, I was able to, yes, I had to make a lot of decisions, and yes, it was like really difficult decisions, or like just not even difficult, but just like decisions, right? And having people around, having people with us was helpful, and then just constantly, like, now at this point, it's like, all right, how are we gonna, continue her legacy? Her daughter ran for secretary this year and won like a couple of weeks ago, because her mom was PTA secretary of the PTA for the school. So
Right.
Mila wanted to do the same like her mom, so she ran, and she used the quote from Frida about like community in her speech, and
I love it.
Yeah, so we're definitely keeping her legacy alive and trying to do different things. So
yeah. And she, Frida, like you said, and I've said before, is she had a really big impact on a lot of people in the breast cancer community, which has been amazing to see, I'm sure, even from your perspective as well. I know when I reached out to you, letting you know that Frida was selected as being the scholarship winner, one of the things that really touched my heart is you had said to me, my family has been so blessed, since Frida's passing, that I would love for you to give that scholarship to somebody else in the community who was thriving, which, like I said, it touched my heart that you did that. And it was such an amazing thing to do, because I know that was Frida's legacy, to always give back. And so to see that you wanted to do the same was great. And then just to let you know, is we actually passed that grant along to another young woman who was living with metastatic breast cancer for her and her daughter. Sadly, she recently passed away as well. But that grant went to her daughter, who's going into her senior year of high school. So just to show you how those things keep, we're always trying to help everybody along the way, which I'm sure that's something that you and your family are still wanting to do on Frida's legacy as well.
Yeah. Trying to do a few more things with her, trying to start up a scholarship at UCSD under her name. Like I said, like, a lot of the things that we're doing are with her in mind, obviously. And that was an easy thing. Like, I knew that I was like, especially when you're in it, it's hard to get people to care, to give, money. And then when somebody dies, it's like, oh, everyone all of a sudden cares. It's not actually that, but it's
right.
like,
No, I get it.
I mean, really, it's, I know that when you're going through the treatment, it's difficult to get what you need, because like, it's like, it could be years long of a fight. Right. So
yeah, you just never know.
So it was a decision on my end to get back.
Well, what's something that you want, as we kind of, wrap up our time here, what is something that you would like the community to know, not even just about Frida, but even about your family or just the breast cancer community as a whole?
I think, so I stole a quote from her Instagram because I was asked a couple of weeks ago to help with a program that both Frida and I went to, or actually were academic transition counselors for, and it's called Summer Bridge. And so they asked me to, give a quote of Frida's because they wanted to help use that to be the theme, right, of Summer Bridge, right? So I found one, and it kind of spoke to me, and it has to do with, communities there to ground you and uplift you. And I'm butchering the quote already, but I could share it later. But then, and they're there for you in the highs, the lows, and everything in between, right? And so that's something that spoke to me, and it was easy to just point to that and say, like, this is exactly what she, fought for her life for, to make sure the community felt her presence and vice versa. So I'm using that quote a lot more now to a lot, though I need to get it right, but she definitely wrote it, and it's on her Instagram somewhere. And now it's the theme for Summer Bridge, and then they asked me to keynote speak for and talk about Frida during there. So
I love it.
So I was able to do that. So another way to give back. So we'll keep doing it.
Yeah. No matter how big or how small, it's still something.
Yeah, definitely. And then I know one of the things that she did do, and you can see it on my cup. Or can you? Nope. Okay. It says "You are loved." She made a bunch of these for a lot of the people in the cancer community, and she sent it out to them. Right? She made something like that, and then this one that says like "You are enough." And so like they're little like cards that she made to just support others.
Yeah.
And then we actually turned those into stickers, and now a lot of people have them. And we were able to hand that out to people during the funeral. But definitely nice reminder for us to just have.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Carlo, I definitely want to thank you for joining me today and sharing, a little bit about your family and Frida and the work that she was doing here in the breast cancer community. As I told you before, she made a really big impact. And as well as you, like, we will continue to honor her legacy and the work that she's been doing. And I know that you and I will keep in touch and make sure that we keep Frida's legacy alive.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. Appreciate it. I'm happy to join you for this. So thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody that's watching, thank you for joining us for another episode of Baddie to Baddie, and we will talk soon. Thank you. This is another Baddie creation brought to you by For the Breast of Us. Don't forget to subscribe to Baddie to Baddie wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Facebook and Instagram at For the Breast of Us, on Twitter at The Breast of Us, and check us out online at breastofus.com. Thanks for listening.